My name is Zelda, and I'm 39 years old. I'm standing in a hospital corridor that smells like bleach, and a kind of grief so profound it has no sound. Minutes ago, I did the one thing no person should ever have to do. I identified the bodies of my entire world. My husband, Matthew, my 8-year-old daughter, Olivia, and my 6-year-old son, Liam. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I called my parents, Richard and Susan. They were in Hawaii, celebrating my sister Megan's destination wedding. My father answered. I could hear music. I told him. I choked out the words. They're gone. Matthew. Olivia. Liam. They're all gone. There was a long, cold silence. Then his voice. Not sad, but annoyed. Zelda. We can't come back. This is Megan's big day. Don't ruin it for her. The funeral. It can wait. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The funeral was held on a Tuesday. I stood alone between 3 caskets. The largest one was for Matthew. Simple. Dark cherry wood. He always appreciated things that were built to last. The smaller one was for Olivia. It was painted a soft white. And the funeral director, a kind woman whose own daughter was 8, had, without asking me, placed a small, simple engraving of a violin near the handle. And then there was Liam's. It was the smallest. It was covered in cartoon dinosaurs. Matthew's colleagues from the software firm filled one side of the church. His elderly parents, who I had to arrange special transport for, sat in the front row, holding my hand so tightly, their knuckles were white. The other side of the aisle was a sea of empty pine. My side. I had asked the funeral director to place 4 small, handwritten name cards on the very front pew. Not out of hope, but out of some need for proof. Father Richard, Mother Susan, Sister Megan, Ryan. I stared at those 4 empty chairs for the entire service. The eulogies became white noise. The hymns were just echoes. My entire focus was on that empty space. That void where my family was supposed to be. It was the legacy of the empty chair. My mother always had a saying. Good daughters don't keep score. Zelda. I'd lived my life by that. I never kept score. I just paid. I thought about 5 years ago, when my mother, Susan, had her hip replacement. I was on the brink of a major promotion at the architecture firm. The one that would have made me junior partner. Megan, my sister. I was just too busy finding herself to help. So I stepped away. I took 3 months of unpaid leave to sleep on a cot in my parents' living room, managing my mother's medications, helping her to the bathroom, listening to her complain about the hospital food. The day she could finally walk on her own, Megan showed up with a $50 bouquet of flowers and got all the credit for being such a supportive daughter. I didn't keep score. I thought about Megan's first wedding, the one that never happened. Her fiancé bailed 2 weeks before the ceremony, leaving my father, Richard, in a panic about the non-refundable deposits. He wasn't worried about Megan's heart. He was worried about the public embarrassment of it all. So I quietly moved $20,000 from the savings account Matthew and I had for our first house. I paid off the caterer and the venue, just to save the family from embarrassment. Matthew was the only one who saw it. He held me that night and said, They've trained you to disappear. Zelda, they only see you when they need something. I'd always argued with him. They're my family. Matt? Now. He was gone. My children were gone. And those 4 empty chairs screamed a truth louder than any hymn. I had finally started keeping score. That night, the silence in our house was a physical thing. It was heavier than any object, pressing down on me. Liam's toy dinosaurs were still piled by the fireplace. Olivia's violin case was on the piano, waiting to be opened. Matthew's coffee mug was still in the sink, right where he'd left it. I walked through the empty rooms, my hand trailing along the walls, half expecting to wake up from this nightmare. I picked up my phone. Force of habit. I opened Instagram. And there it was. My sister, Megan. Her profile picture had already changed. It was her and Ryan, standing on a beach in Hawaii. She was radiant, laughing, wearing a white dress that must have cost a fortune. The caption, posted just 3 hours ago, while I was watching my children's caskets being lowered into the ground, read, Best day ever. Starting our new life number. Blessed number. Hawaii wedding number. Soin love. I stared at the screen. I read the words over and over. Best day ever. In that moment, I understood something. Psychologists talk about the first wound and the second wound. The first wound was the accident. The truck driver. The metal. The end of everything. It was catastrophic. An act of brutal chance that destroyed my life. But this was the second wound. The empty chairs. The cold voice of my father. The smiling number. Blessed photo. This wound didn't come from a stranger on the highway. It came from the people who were supposed to be my shelter. And in so many ways, it cut deeper. It didn't just destroy my present, it poisoned my entire past, making me question if any of their love had ever been real. And I finally understood why. It wasn't just simple cruelty. It was a system. In the twisted psychology of my family, there had always been two roles. Megan was the golden child. She was the one meant to shine. The one whose entire life was a performance for my parents to applaud. Her job was to be happy, to be beautiful, to get married in Hawaii. And I was the scapegoat. My job was to make her shine possible. I was the one who was supposed to be responsible. I was the one who carried the burdens, paid the $20,000 debts, and absorbed the dysfunction. I was the responsible one, which I now realized was just a polite word for the one they were allowed to sacrifice. They didn't skip my family's funeral because they were simply monsters. They skipped it because, in their narcissistic family system, a wedding for the golden child is genuinely, truly, more important than a funeral for the scapegoat. My tragedy wasn't a tragedy to them. It was just an inconvenient, dramatic interruption to the real show, Megan's happiness. I didn't cry. The realization was too cold. Too structural. It was like clicking a final, heavy piece of iron into place. I wasn't just grieving. I was awake. 3 weeks passed, in a silent, agonizing blur. The house was a museum of a life I used to have. Then, the doorbell rang. It was Megan and her new husband, Ryan. They were tan from their honeymoon. Megan was wearing expensive-looking white linen. She walked past me into the foyer. Not hugging me, but just patting my arm. Oh, Zelda. It's just so awful. Ryan, who worked in real estate, wasn't even trying to fake sympathy. His eyes were scanning the vaulted ceilings. The custom millwork Matthew and I had designed. He was appraising the place. This is a lot of house for one person. Zelda, Megan said. Walking into the kitchen, Ryan nodded, running his hand along the quartz countertop. It really is. You know, we've been thinking. We want to help you. I just stared at him. Help me. Yeah, he said, pulling out his phone. This place is worth, what? 800,000 in this market. But you've got the upkeep, the taxes, the memories. It's a burden. So, we'll take it off your hands. We can do 400,000. Cash. Quick, close. Help you get this weight off your shoulders. They weren't vultures. They were worse. They were acting like they were doing me a favor, offering me half the value of the home my husband built. The home my children died in. Get out, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was colder than the marble floor. Megan looked genuinely shocked. Zelda, we're trying to be supportive. Get out. They left, indignant, as if I had been the one to offend them. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, my father called. I hadn't heard his voice since he told me not to ruin Megan's wedding. I answered. A small, stupid part of me hoping he was calling to apologize. He wasn't. Zelda, he started. His voice, all business. Your sister is very upset. You were rude. I said nothing. Look, he continued, annoyed by my silence. We need to talk about the finances. Matthew must have had something set aside. Life insurance. I was sitting at Matthew's desk. In front of me was a stack of bills. The largest one, for $50,000, was from the funeral home. I hadn't even begun to think about how I was going to pay it. Dad, what do you want? Megan needs a fresh start, he said. She's an influencer now. She needs to project a certain image. She and Ryan found the perfect luxury condo. But the down payment is significant. You need to do the right thing. Zelda. Family helps family. Whatever Matthew left, you need to share it. Megan needs it. I looked at the $50,000 funeral bill. I looked at the phone. He wasn't asking about me. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't mention Olivia or Liam. He was just a man, calling to collect a debt I didn't owe. I felt a sudden, strange, calm. The hopelessness that had been crushing me for 3 weeks was suddenly replaced by something else. A cold, hard clarity. I hung up the phone. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, in the dark. And for the first time since the hospital, I knew exactly what to do. The grief was still there. A massive black ocean. But now, a new, sharp, and very clear path was illuminated right through the middle of it. I went to see Thomas Reed the next morning, clutching the $50,000 funeral bill in my hand. Thomas had been our family's attorney for 30 years. He was a stoic, older man who had handled my parents' estate planning and, I assumed, Matthew's. I was walking in there to beg. To ask if Matthew's 401k could cover the caskets. To ask for a payment plan. I sat in his stiff leather chair, my hands folded. Mr. Reed. I have this bill. $50,000. I don't know how I'm going to pay it. I'm not sure what Matthew left. Thomas just looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Zelda, he said, his voice quiet. We need to discuss your husband's estate, and I need to apologize. I've been waiting for the right moment. Your husband was a very meticulous man. He slid a thick binder across his desk. Matthew didn't just have an insurance policy. He had 3, all paid from private accounts I managed for him. He didn't want them linked to your joint finances. My mind was racing. 3. How much? Your husband, Matthew, left a total of $8 million. Zelda. The number didn't compute. It was just a sound. 8 million. That's impossible. Thomas. We saved for that kitchen renovation for 2 years. He drove a 10-year-old car. He was very specific. Thomas said, that you were not to know. He said, and I quote, Zelda sacrifices enough for her family. This is for her. I was stunned, but Thomas held up a hand. The money is the least important part of this conversation. He turned his laptop around. He left this for you. A video. He asked me to play it for you when you came to see me. Alone. He pressed play, and Matthew's face filled the screen. He was in this same office, wearing his favorite green sweater, the one I always stole. He looked tired, but so clear. Sought determined. Zelda, he said, and my heart stopped. His voice. My love, if you're watching this, it means the worst has happened. And it means I'm gone. And it also means your family is already doing exactly what we were always afraid they would do. Tears were streaming down my face, but I couldn't look away. The $8 million is for you, he said, but it's not a gift. Zelda, it's a weapon, and it's a shield. I'm so sorry you have to use it. It continued. I've been documenting everything. For years. Every time your father borrowed money. Every time Megan had an emergency. That $20,000 check you wrote for her first wedding. I have the receipt. I have the text messages from your father, pressuring you. I have the emails where you turned down the promotion to care for Susan. But then, he did something else. Something I could never have imagined. I've hired a private company, Matthew said on the screen, his eyes burning with an intensity I'd never seen in him. They've been retained to professionally and discreetly film my funeral, and Olivia's, and Liam's, from multiple angles. Every empty seat will be documented. Every name card will be in high definition. What? I whispered. And finally, Matthew said, I've set up what my lawyer calls a dead man's switch. I know them. Zelda. As soon as they hear about this money, they'll come for it. They'll say you're unstable. They'll say you're grieving. They'll try to take control. He was describing, word for word, what Richard and Megan had already started. So the switch is this, Matthew said. The moment. The second. Your father or your sister formally contests my will. The moment they file a single piece of paper in probate court. A prepaid $50,000 retainer is automatically triggered. It goes to one of the top PR firms in Boston. And their only instruction is this: protect the integrity of the Matthew Hayes STEM Legacy Fund. And they will be given all the evidence to do it. He leaned in closer to the camera. The video of the empty funeral seats. The audio recording of the phone call from Hawaii. The receipts for the $20,000. The screenshots of Megan's wedding photos. Dime stampet. It will all go public. He planned all of this. I breathed. Thomas Reed paused the video. Your husband, Zelda, was an architect of a different kind. He built you a fortress. Matthew's voice echoed in my head. Don't let them take anything else from you. Z. Build something beautiful. Make them proud. He had known. He had seen all of it. He saw me. And even from the grave. He had just handed me my sword and my shield. I poured every cent of my energy into the Matthew Hayes STEM Legacy Fund. It was the only thing that made sense. I wasn't just an architect of buildings anymore. I was the architect of my husband's legacy. I spent my days in meetings with university boards, and my nights reviewing scholarship applications. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of purpose. Then, one Saturday morning, I went to the local farmer's market. It was a bright, cold day in our small New England town. The air smelled like apples and coffee. It was crowded. I was just buying some bread when I heard her voice. Oh my God. There she is. I turned. It was Megan. Her phone was out. The screen facing her. Clearly live streaming to her followers. Everyone. Look. It's my sister. Zelda, she shouted. And the bustling market quieted. People turned to look. The one I told you about. The one who's grieving, on top of $8 million. She walked toward me. Performing for her audience. Her voice cracking with fake tears. I just want a fresh start. I just want my family to have a home. And she has $8 million and she won't help us. She won't even help our parents. I stood there, holding a loaf of sourdough. I looked at her. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. I just saw the mechanism. I saw the golden child performing. And I remembered Matthew's voice from the video. They'll say, you're unstable. Let them. I said nothing. I just turned, paid for my bread, and walked away, as she continued to shout at my back. The video, of course, went viral in our community. Grieving widow hoards millions from struggling sister. That video was exactly the proof my father needed. A week later, I was served papers. Richard was formally contesting the will. He was petitioning the probate court to have me declared mentally incompetent, citing my erratic behavior at the farmer's market and my unstable refusal to communicate with family. He was asking for full control of the $8 million estate. The dead man's switch had been flipped. The courtroom was small and suffocating. Richard, Susan, and Megan sat on one side, looking like a portrait of concerned, grieving relatives. Richard's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a woman broken by grief, unstable, and easily manipulated. He played the farmer's market video for the judge. Your Honor, he said, this is not the behavior of a stable person. This is a woman in crisis. A danger to herself and her own assets. The judge, a stern-looking woman, watched the video with a serious expression. She looked at me. I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, it was Thomas Reed's turn. He stood up, buttoning his gray suit jacket. Your Honor, he said, his voice calm and precise. My client is not unstable. She is, however, the victim of a profound betrayal. We agree that video evidence is important, which is why Mr. Matthew Hayes prepared a final affidavit. From the grave, he signaled to his aide. A large monitor was turned to face the judge. This is from the funeral service for Matthew, Olivia, and Liam Hayes. Thomas said. The video began. It was professional quality, crystal clear. It showed the 3 caskets at the front of the church. It showed me, alone, in the front pew. And then, it panned, slowly, to the empty row, across the aisle. It zoomed in, one by one, on the 4 handwritten name cards: Father Richard, Mother Susan, Sister Megan, Ryan. The timestamp in the corner of the screen was clear. And now, Thomas Reed said into the dead silent courtroom, we have the audio of a phone call made by my client to her father on the day her family died. The same day. as her sister's wedding in Hawaii. He pressed play. My father's voice, cold and annoyed, filled the room. Zelda, we can't come back. This is Megan's big day. Don't ruin it for her. The funeral. It can wait. My mother, Susan, let out a small, strangled gasp. Megan's face was white. Richard looked like he had been turned to stone. The judge stared at my father. Her face was no longer neutral. It was a mask of pure contempt. She didn't deliberate. She didn't pause. She banged her gavel so hard, the sound cracked through the room. Petition dismissed. She snapped. Mr. Reed, I suggest you file for sanctions against the petitioner for this grotesque waste of the court's time. We are done here. It was over. My family just sat there, frozen, as I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, breathing free air for the first time. But the judgment in that courtroom wasn't the end. It was just the trigger. The moment my father, Richard, had filed that petition, Matthew's dead man switch had activated. The $50,000 retainer, sitting in escrow, was transferred to the PR firm. And now, with the judge's scathing dismissal, they had the final, legally verified piece of the story. They didn't just leak it. They executed it. It was a precise, professional, and devastating press release sent to every major news outlet in New England. Local influencer sues, grieving, widowed, sister for $8M, inheritance after skipping children's funeral for Hawaii wedding. They had the complete, undeniable package. The court filings, the judge's official, contempt-filled dismissal, the high-definition, time-stamped video of the 4 empty chairs, the audio file of my father's phone call, "Don't ruin Megan's big day." And, as the final blow, they included Megan's own live stream from the farmer's market. Now, perfectly framed for what it was, a calculated, failed attempt to manufacture evidence of my instability. The story exploded. Megan's brand, meticulously built on authenticity and good vibes, was annihilated in less than 24 hours. Her sponsors, major lifestyle and wellness companies, dropped her, citing morality clauses. Her talent agency fired her via a one-sentence email. Her comment sections became a global wasteland of disgust. Ryan was fired from his real estate firm. My father was quietly and unanimously asked to resign from the board of his beloved country club. My mother, Susan, the socialite, she just ceased to exist. Her phone stopped ringing. Her social world had evaporated. The justice wasn't just legal. It was total. 1 year later, I was in a different world. The Matthew Hayes STEM Legacy Fund was thriving. We had just sent our first 10 students to college. All expenses paid. Their futures were my purpose. I was in a quarterly review with Thomas Reed when he slid a document across the desk. This came across my desk. He said, "I thought you might want to see it." It was a foreclosure notice. For my childhood home. The house I grew up in. My parents' home. Their social and financial ruin was complete. I went to the auction. I stood at the back, wearing a baseball cap. Just another anonymous face in the crowd. I was the winning bid. For a week, I just held the keys. I thought about what to do with it. Sell it, let it rot. Then I knew. I called my contractors. We took it down to the studs. We tore out the old carpets, painted over the dark memories, and let in the light. When it was finished, it was beautiful. I signed the final papers, donating the house, fully renovated and fully furnished, to the largest regional women's shelter. They named it, at my request, the Susan Hayes New Beginnings Home, after my mother. It was a public, press-covered event. Thomas asked me, "Zelda, was this the final stroke of revenge?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "It's not revenge. It's surgery." I'd finally understood. When you have a disease, a part of you that is so toxic it's killing everything else, you can't just be angry at it. You have to remove it. This wasn't an act of hate. It was an act of survival. It was the clean cut. You have to surgically remove the sickness, cleanly and completely, not to punish it, but to finally, allow new, healthy life to grow in its place. I stood across the street the day it opened. I watched a young mother, holding the hand of a little girl about Olivia's age, walk up the steps. She paused at the new, bright red door. looked up at the name, and she smiled. A real smile. One of hope. And for the first time since I'd stood in that hospital corridor, I felt a profound key at peace. Family isn't blood. It's not who you're born to. It's who shows up. It's who stands beside you when your world ends. And who helps you build a new one. Thank you for listening.